When two superstars join forces, the outcome is usually a hit single, but sometimes even huge collaborations fail to live up to the hype. In this video, we'll look at 8 high-profile collabs that flopped. Pretty Girls by Britney Spears and Iggy Azalea. When Pretty Girls was released in 2015, it looked like a perfect pairing on paper. Britney Spears was in the midst of her Las Vegas Piece of Me residency, proving that she could still pull major crowds and headline one of the biggest shows on the Strip. At the same time, Iggy Azalea was riding the massive wave of success from Fancy and Problem with Ariana Grande, which were both top 3 hits. Both stars seemed primed to deliver a summer anthem, with Britney hoping for a chart comeback and Iggy aiming to continue her dominance. Unfortunately, it didn't live up to the hype. The song was meant to be fun and that trendy 2015 sound. Even the music video, which had campy alien visuals, was seen as uninspired. The song was forgettable, and despite the star power behind it, Pretty Girls peaked only at number 29 on the Billboard Hot 100, a disappointing outcome for a collaboration meant to dominate the charts. The flop left a noticeable mark on both artists. For Britney, it underlined the difficulty she faced in landing a hit in that era, while Iggy's career went downhill since then. What should have been a win-win instead became a generational flop from 2 of the biggest artists at the time. Up Out My Face by Mariah Carey featuring Nicki Minaj. Back in 2010, Mariah Carey was trying to regain her commercial footing after the mixed reception of Memoirs of an Imperfect Angel. Meanwhile, Nicki Minaj was the hottest new rapper on the scene, fresh off show-stealing verses on songs like Monster and gearing up to release her debut album Pink Friday. On paper, pairing the legendary diva with the rising hip-hop star seemed like a brilliant way for Mariah Carey to stay relevant, while giving Nicki a huge cosign. The single was intended to be playful for the 2 generations. The reality was underwhelming. The song lacked the punch needed to become a genuine hit. Its bubblegum production and repetitive hook just didn't connect. The music video featuring both Mariah and Nicki as life-size dolls didn't help its performance. Despite the star power, the single peaked at number 100 on the Billboard Hot 100 and exited the chart the next week. For Mariah, the song reflected the broader struggles she faced in finding a place in the shifting pop landscape of the early 2010s. For Nicki, it was just a minor detour in her meteoric rise, as she quickly moved on to bigger and more impactful collaborations. In hindsight, the collab is funny, where you think about how they both came to hate each other after they were judges on American Idol together. Up Out My Face is now a forgotten moment in both their careers. Mine by Beyoncé featuring Drake. When Beyoncé surprise released her self-titled visual album in December 2013, it instantly shifted how albums were rolled out in the streaming era. Every track had a music video, and anticipation was sky high. On paper, Mine featuring Drake should have been a cultural moment, 2 of the biggest names in music joining forces during the peak of their dominance. Beyoncé was coming off the back of her 2011 album 4 and the massive Mrs. Carter Show World Tour, while Drake was fresh off the success of Nothing Was the Same, which spawned hits like Hold On We're Going Home, and fans expected a smash. Instead, Mine ended up being one of the most overlooked tracks on the album. While it was pushed as a promotional single, it only peaked at number 82 on the Billboard Hot 100 and left the charts entirely after just 2 weeks, a surprising low performance for a Beyoncé-Drake collaboration. The song had a weird mellow production and lacked the replay factor that typically fuels chart success. It failed to gain traction on radio or streaming compared to other songs from the project like Drunk in Love or Partition. In hindsight, Mine is remembered as a missed opportunity. It had 2 megastars at the height of their careers, but the song's experimental sound and lack of traditional pop structure kept it from becoming a smash hit. Beyoncé would go on to dominate with Lemonade, while Drake continued his run of Billboard dominance, but their collaboration was underwhelming. Bongos by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion. In December 2023, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion reunited for Bongos, the highly anticipated follow-up to their blockbuster 2020 hit WAP. At the time, both artists were in a unique position. Cardi hadn't released an album since Invasion of Privacy back in 2018, but was still riding her reputation as a consistent hitmaker. Megan, meanwhile, was coming off a tough year publicly, but had critical acclaim and Grammy wins to her name. With the massive success of WAP still fresh in the memory, Bongos seemed like it could never fail. The rollout was big, with flashy visuals and heavy promotion, but despite the buzz, Bongos peaked at number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100, a big contrast to the number 1 debut of WAP. While it wasn't a complete flop, the song didn't live up to expectations. The Latin-inspired production and carnival-themed video divided fans, with many feeling that it lacked the energy and shock factor that made their first collab a phenomenon. Ultimately, Bongos exposed the difficulty of chasing lightning twice. Cardi and Megan are still major forces in hip-hop, but for Cardi, the song added more pressure to finally deliver on her long-awaited sophomore album. Video Phone by Beyoncé featuring Lady Gaga. In 2009, Beyoncé was riding high on the success of her I Am Such a Fierce era, which gave the world smash hits like Single Ladies and Halo. Lady Gaga, meanwhile, had become a star, with her debut album The Fame, and Poker Face was dominating global charts. Their collaboration on Video Phone seemed like a dream pairing for two of the most powerful women in pop. However, the song itself fell flat. It lacked the memorable hooks or sonic push that made both artists' solo careers so impactful. Instead, it was a mid-tempo, almost experimental single that felt more like a novelty than a radio anthem. It has not aged well either, as all phones have cameras now. At the time, it peaked at a modest number 65 on the Billboard Hot 100, an anticlimactic performance considering the megastar collaboration, but it didn't damage either artist's career. They both would go on to dominate the next decade in their own right, but Video Phone is rarely mentioned among their best works. In fact, it was overshadowed by Telephone, their other collaboration which came a year later and made a lasting impact. The failure of the song showed us that not every superstar pairing automatically guarantees a blockbuster hit. Swish Swish by Katy Perry featuring Nicki Minaj. By 2017, Katy Perry was coming off one of the most successful runs in modern pop history. With Teenage Dream in 2010 and Prism in 2013, she had accumulated a string of #1 singles that cemented her as a dominant force. But by the time she launched her Witness era, it just didn't connect. Looking to reinvent herself, Katy got Nicki Minaj for Swish Swish, a thinly veiled clapback anthem rumored to be aimed at Taylor Swift. On paper, it was a guaranteed recipe for success. Katy, one of the most consistent hitmakers of the 2010s, teaming up with Nicki Minaj, who was at the peak of her dominance. But the song failed to connect with the public, despite its trendy house-inspired production and the music video filled with internet memes and forced comedy cameos. It failed to live up to the hype. The song managed to climb to number 46 on the Billboard Hot 100, but given the names attached, it was a commercial disappointment. For Katy, it became a symbol of her declining chart dominance. Even though Nicki tried to save it with one of her better verses, it just couldn't connect. Today, the song is mostly remembered for fueling the Taylor-Katy feud, rather than any musical impact. It kinda started the decline of Katy's career. When You Believe by Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. When You Believed was released in 1998, it brought together two of the biggest vocal powerhouses in music history, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. Both artists were at very different points in their careers. Mariah was riding high off her late 90s dominance, with hits like Honey and My All, while Whitney was coming off a mixed period, with her mainstream success declining. The pairing was meant to be monumental, celebrating the soundtrack for The Prince of Egypt. Despite the star power, the song struggled to meet expectations. It peaked at number 15 on the Billboard Hot 100, a modest position considering there were two of the biggest artists ever. Internationally, it performed better in some markets, but overall, it failed to become the cultural event many predicted. The song was vocal gymnastics, but it didn't quite capture the public's attention. Its flop was partly due to timing. While Mariah and Whitney were both revered, they seemed to be out of their moment, as pop was starting to be dominated by teen pop stars and boy bands. Today, the song is remembered as a disappointment, highlighting that even music royalty can't guarantee a hit. Me Against the Music by Britney Spears and Madonna. Released in 2003, Me Against the Music paired pop icon Madonna with the superstar of that generation, Britney Spears, who was at the peak of her early 2000s fame following Oops, I Did It Again and the launch of her In the Zone album. Madonna was looking to remain relevant in the changing pop landscape, and Britney was at the height of her stardom, making the collaboration feel like a clash of eras. designed to dominate the charts. Despite all that hype, Me Against the Music peaked only at number 35 on the Billboard Hot 100, underwhelming for two of pop's biggest names. The song had better reception internationally, reaching the top 10 in countries like Australia and the UK, but critics were divided on it. The flop signaled a shift in Britney's career as she transitioned from teen pop queen to exploring more mature sounds. For Madonna, it highlighted the challenges of staying relevant for 2 decades. In hindsight, the song is a reminder that you can't really coast on your collaboration star power. You have to meet and exceed expectations. Which high-profile collabs that flopped did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.